Welcome to the Just My MomSense podcast. I'm not an expert, I'm just trying to figure out parenting and in turn myself while sharing things I've learned with all of you. Welcome back to the Just My MomSense podcast. I'm so excited for today's guest. He is someone I met in the Disney community. As you may have noticed by now, I've met quite a few people this way. And he is an educator, an author, that's right, I said it, and also a fellow Disney podcaster. But in his day-to-day, he's helping students and parents build a community inside and out of the school, and we get into all of it on this episode. So please welcome to the Just My MomSense podcast, Dr. Troy Roddy. Welcome, Troy. I should call you Dr. Troy because that's how we like to refer to you in the Disney community. But welcome, Dr. Troy, to
Thank you.
the Just My MomSense podcast.
Oh, it's a great pleasure to be here. Thanks, Jen, for inviting me. I'm happy to be here and happy to share whatever I can to help your listeners manage their day, especially if they have children in school, because that's what I do, right?
Yeah,
So
that's how you roll. And you have just a little bit of expertise in that, I think. So can you tell us, for those that don't know you, more about you and your background and
sure.
maybe why I asked you to be on this podcast because of all of that?
Yeah, thanks a lot. So, right. So my name is Troy Roddy. I think I'm in my 32nd year working in education. And so your listeners are aware, I have spent pretty much my entire career in private school education. And that may be a topic to dig in a little bit, deeper into. But yeah, I originally started off, I graduated from undergraduate school. I was actually the first person in my family to go to college and graduate from college. So I didn't really know up until the last minute what I wanted to do. And I suddenly realized I wanted to coach high school baseball, right? So
Yeah.
the first part of my career was in coaching and teaching, mostly high school students, some middle school students. And then from there, as I just got older and started to appreciate, what teaching was really about, my interest I moved away from the athletic stuff and more towards how do schools function, how are they structured, how do they support teachers. And so, yeah, I mean, just over the course of time, going back to school, going to graduate school, and finally getting a doctorate in education has led me to where I am today. So I'm currently a head of school at a small private Episcopal school in Houston, Texas. So, uh, yeah, that's sort of a summary of my background.
Just a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm sure that coaching kind of it has to kind of lay that groundwork and teach you so much about being a teacher and a leader and building that community between parents and kids and because you're dealing with that all the time as a coach, I'm sure.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've been very open about this at my own
Mhm.
workplace. I think I even said this in the interview I had to get the job that I currently have, which is if I had been the in charge of the school
Mhm.
that hired me, I
Yeah.
wouldn't have made it out of my first year. Like I was not good.
Yeah.
I didn't really know what I was doing. I
Yeah.
didn't. I mean, I walked into a private school to coach baseball and teach social studies. As a matter of fact, my first class that I ever taught was a high school
Mhm.
class of seniors. There were 5 students in the class. 3 of them I was supposed to teach an accounting class to, and 2 of them I was supposed to teach an economics class to. And I remember telling the principal, this is the first class I've ever taught.
Yeah.
How do I teach 2 classes at once?
Mhm. Yeah.
And the principal looked at me and said, Troy, listen, these are 5 seniors
Mhm.
that aren't responsible enough to have a study hall. So we put them in this elective. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Just keep them safe and
Yeah.
teach them something, right?
Yeah.
And so that was literally my first class right out of college. I was 21 years old and I was teaching 17 and 18-year-olds because I was graduated college pretty young, right?
Yeah.
And that was a disaster.
Yeah.
Like if any, I don't think any of those five people may be listening. You know, they might, but they will probably say, "Yeah, Coach Roddy was did not know what he was doing that first year." So I had to sort of learn by making a lot of mistakes, which I think is a great lesson
Yeah.
for education in general, right? The
Yeah.
things that you want to do better, that you commit yourself to improving,
Hmm.
come with a number of mistakes and hiccups along the way. And that was certainly a lesson I had to learn early on. But coaching, listen, I played sports in college. I played football and baseball, and I was not what you would consider a leader on the team. Like I wasn't a vocal person.
Hmm.
I mean, I remember the coach telling me, Troy, you're a senior, you've been a 2 year starter. When are you going to open your mouth and say something in a huddle? Right. And I was like, I just don't say a whole lot. Right.
Yeah. Hmm.
So I had to learn from coaching
Yeah.
what it was really like to be responsible, to
Hmm.
be, to think about what the needs of the team were,
Yeah.
and to be planning ahead and having a vision for what you wanted to achieve and then mapping out a path to get there. And again, I'm 21 years old and I was just reading leadership books trying to figure
Yeah.
out, how do I do this? And again, I made a ton of mistakes because, like a lot of young people in a leadership role,
Yeah.
I thought if I yelled and screamed enough, then people would just listen to me because that was sort of the example I had. And
Yeah.
I learned quickly that he who usually in a confrontation, he who yells first loses.
Hmm. Yeah. Yep.
And so, yeah, I think in terms of preparing for the work I do now,
Yeah.
those lessons I learned through coaching
Hmm.
sports was really invaluable. There's no way in my graduate school work
Hmm.
that even came close to being replicated. Those lessons. I
Yeah.
mean, we read papers and
Yeah.
did studies, but
Right.
it was a lot of real practical learning.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't think anything ever teaches someone as well as like the real life experience of it all and going through it. And um, I think it's interesting, and we will get to you being a podcast host for someone who wasn't a talker. I mean, now you, there's
Well,
plenty of talking happening. But also, as you learned, like a ton of listening that has to happen as well. And not jumping to yelling and going down that path, which I agree. I think anytime someone is yelling or getting too visibly angry or anything like that, it's like you don't hear them as well at that point. You kind of just freeze, and it's that you're not getting your message across when you're yelling. So, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. If you are, I would say as I've grown into my work,
Hmm.
one thing I have to remind not just myself, but I'm often facilitating meetings with other people who
Yeah.
may be in conflict.
Hmm.
And part of it is if you're not ready to really listen to
Hmm.
what the other person is saying, then this is a bad idea.
Yeah.
Because if your
Yep.
objective is just to force your opinion down someone's neck,
Yeah.
you're going to walk out of there unsatisfied. And the person walking out of there that you're talking with is going to walk out of there even more upset than when they started. So if there
Hmm.
isn't a space right now for us to understand, even if we don't change our mind, but if we're not willing to try to understand,
Yeah.
then we probably need to hold off
Yeah.
on having that conversation until we're really ready to do that. And
Right.
that's in education in schools that is difficult because you so desperately want to resolve problems, right? Teachers are
Hmm.
problem solvers
Yeah.
by and large, right?
Yeah.
And so when something doesn't feel right
Yeah.
and you sense that something is a problem, like
Hmm.
something needs to change, like you want to hurry up and do that. And sometimes my role as a head of school, as a school leader,
Yeah.
is to help people figure out exactly what the problem is they're trying to solve, not
Hmm.
address all the little contextual clues
Right.
that would suggest that there's a real problem. because
Hmm.
what you're initially upset about or in disagreement on may have nothing to do with the actual underlying issue,
Yeah.
and that's sometimes takes a more objective person in the room to
Yeah.
help find that space. So
Yeah, to be the mediator there. Yeah. I know as head of a school, the an important thing, especially to you, but I think my personal opinion should be important to anyone in that role is the sense of community. So, how do you think you go about building a healthy community, not only for like administration to teachers, but then also factoring in parents and students as well? Because I feel like there's probably two separate categories there, but then one big category as well. So how do you go about
right,
building that community?
that's a fantastic question. I would say this, and this is some advice I would give any school leader. First of all, figure out for yourself what personally motivates you. What is this? What is the big sort of purpose that's greater than your own self satisfaction that motivates you to be in this field?
Yeah.
Because if you're going to lead a school, just like if you're going to teach in a school, in my opinion,
Yeah.
it is so personal. Like you have to bring your authentic self into
Mhm.
the equation. So
Yeah.
if you don't know why you're doing this
Yeah.
and you
Hmm.
don't own that and you're not transparent about it, it could become a roadblock to connecting with people and helping them grow that sense of community, grow that sense of trust. Because what is community built on? It's built on trust. It's
Hmm.
built on reliability. It's built on relationships and connections. You may
Hmm.
not always agree, but the underlying, ethos of the institution is generally broad enough to accommodate, a spectrum of people, right? Um, if it was so defined, you wouldn't have a community. You'd have like one person,
Yeah.
right? And you can't
Hmm.
have a school of one
Right.
person.
Yeah.
So I think one, you have to know what motivates you and what is your big purpose in life and why are you doing this. And I think if in my case, when I was interviewing for the jobs that I've had,
Hmm.
I always bring that up in the conversation because I wanted the fit between what the community of the school that existed before I got there to fit with my own personal view of what I think things should be. And so, I would describe, from using me as an example, I believe, I do what I do because I think I have the ability to help the world grow kinder and smarter.
Yeah.
And if I'm working in education, I work in education because I feel that I have an opportunity to share my gifts and talents so that the students, again, help the world grow kinder and smarter, right? And it's beyond just the academic stuff, which is very, very important. It's a part of
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
But when the growing gets tough, what are you leaning into? And you're not leaning into test scores to
Yeah.
motivate you to get out of bed in the morning, right? So
Mhm.
I think that's one way to build community is you have to bring your authentic, genuine self because, and I've said this in when I've interviewed teachers too, you can fake it, but
Hmm.
eventually your true self is going to come out. And
Yeah.
so just be yourself, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
And then I think being visible and being available and having a sense of humor. I
Yeah.
mean, you know it's funny at times to
Yeah.
work in schools. I mean, people
Hmm.
do silly things and they make gestures and there's different activities that they do and it's just you build a community based on the story you're trying to tell
Yeah.
about your school. And if your
Hmm.
school is welcoming and inclusive and diverse and joyful,
Yeah.
then as the leader of the school, you have to
Yeah.
project
Hmm.
welcoming, inclusive, and joyful. You can't walk around like, you know, the
Yeah.
the disciplinarian, which sometimes behind closed doors you kind of do what you got to
Yeah.
do. But
Right.
when you're out there, it's am I embodying the character
Hmm.
that this community has thrived on, and
Right.
am I helping it get to the next level? Am I promoting this or am I detracting from this?
Right.
And so, yeah, I think that's, if you're going to build community in a school,
Yeah.
in anything really, know who you are, bring your authentic self into the equation, and surround yourself with people. If you have the
Mhm.
ability to choose who's on your team,
Yeah.
surround yourself with people who have a similar motivational purpose in the work that
Yeah.
they do.
Right. Yeah. And also lean into the things like 6'7", while you're walking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the old 6'7".
The old
I have walked into a middle school class before, and because so I'm 53 now, so I've walked in, and and over the past 3 to 5 years, I've
Mhm.
suddenly realized that I have turned the corner from the up and coming younger administrator to now I am on the other side of the hill. And so I will go into a middle school classroom and I'll say, teach me something. Teach me
Yeah.
some of the lingo. Teach me
Yeah.
some of the vernacular. And they look at me like, what the
Mhm.
heck is a vernacular? I said, teach me some words.
Right.
And so they'll teach me like, what is it? Click it and then
Oh yeah,
whatever.
clock it. If
Clock
people
it, clock
clock
it.
it,
See,
yeah.
I mean, and
That's
you
it.
see, it's going to be an audio record of my oldness, right?
Right.
Of
I only know that because of my 8-year-old. So like first day of
clock
school
it.
was coming home, clock it. I was like, what is that? What do you
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah, you had mentioned I do a podcast, and my daughter and I do a Disney podcast where we met you, right? Called
Hmm.
Disney Assembled. And I have this set up here. This is where I do my recording with her. And I have a ring light, and I was adjusting the light last time she and I were recording. And she's like, stop messing with the light. And I said, I'm trying to farm my aura. I'm trying to get the right light for the aura farming. She says, oh my God. She goes, just stop. She goes,
Just so
there's no aura farming going on here.
yeah.
You're a 53-year-old man talking about Disney parks. And I was like, okay,
Yeah, it's like, oh, right. Thanks. Thanks
there's
for
my own.
humbling me. Yeah.
Thanks, child,
Yeah.
whose college tuition I'm paying.
Right. I appreciate the feedback. That's so helpful. Yeah.
Right. So, but
Um,
yeah.
and then in terms of parents, what kind
Mhm.
of role do you think parents should be playing in the school community or just with their child while they're going through school? Maybe have you seen anything that they should be doing more of or less of? How do you think all that's going?
I think there are some, that's a good question too. I think there are some, it's not new advice,
Hmm.
but one piece of advice I would give any parent,
Yeah.
especially if they have young children
Yeah.
who maybe haven't started school yet,
Hmm.
but even if they've already started school,
Yeah.
surround them with books.
Yeah.
Even if they're not reading all the time. Like
Hmm.
I would give this advice to parents, like every room in your house or your apartment or wherever you live
Hmm.
should have some kind of literature in it.
Yeah.
You put cookbooks in the kitchen, put magazines in the bathrooms, put coffee table books on the coffee table. Surround your children with books because the message is books are important and they're
Yeah.
in our house and they're out for people to see. And whether
Hmm.
they read them or not is not it's not that important. The other
Right.
is you should read and they should see you reading, right? So
Hmm.
even if it's, and I say reading, not on your phone,
Yeah.
right? Looking at your phone and reading an article is not the same as sitting down, even if it's for 10 or 15 minutes,
Hmm.
opening a book
Yeah.
or whatever, or reading a cookbook. Like I have a
Yeah.
cookbook out and I'm trying to follow the recipe.
Hmm.
And then read to your children, right? So reading is that's one of the indicators of school success that I
Yeah.
think I've seen over the years, which is children whose parents read to them, surrounded them with books, took
Hmm.
them to the library on in the summer on the weekends. Those students manage school typically better,
Hmm.
right? It's not that they necessarily end up being Harvard scholars and the others don't, but managing your life as a student and recognizing that books and reading are a significant part of the school experience. I
Hmm.
think that is really important. The other is, I guess, the other piece of advice I give parents is remember that child development is not linear.
Yeah.
It is
Hmm.
not linear. Your
Yeah.
child is not a factory model human.
Yeah. Hmm.
There is no production line school. And even though
Hmm.
school is set up in many ways to look like a production line, you go from
Yeah.
one grade to the next grade, and the numbers get higher. So I must be getting smarter, right? There's a lot of built in symbolism.
Yeah.
And part of that is because humans have to create systems that make sense to them in
Hmm.
order to operate without chaos. Because a school that's in chaos isn't functioning very well, right? And
Yeah.
we see that
Yeah.
chaos for small children, and even I say small children, children in general, chaos breeds anxiety. It
Hmm.
prevents them from being able to think clearly. Their underdeveloped brains aren't able to make better decisions, and it leads to just additional chaos. And then no learning is getting done in a chaos setting, right? Because you're
Hmm.
in survival mode in a chaos setting. So, but I would say remember, child development is not linear. Your child may be really good at reading when they're
Hmm.
4 or 5 years old compared to other 4 and 5 year olds.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that by second grade they should be reading 12th grade novels.
Right. Hmm. Yeah.
Math is a perfect example of this.
Hmm.
Some children, based on how they were exposed and based on what they did in their environment before school or early in school, the basics of math come easy to them and they get it
Yeah.
and they count it and they understand the relationship between numbers and quantities and what addition and subtraction, and so I've seen this a lot where a child is, for their age,
Hmm.
a little bit more advanced in math or pretty well advanced in math, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden there's a drop off,
Hmm.
and then the parent will panic and they'll come to the school like the teacher's not doing this and what's going on here, my child used to get A's in math and now they're struggling in math and what's the deal. Well, learning isn't linear and
Yeah.
sometimes things get hard, and when your
Hmm.
child finally experiences something that is a challenge for them, especially if they haven't been, if school has been easy for them up to a certain
Yeah.
point, at some
Hmm.
day they're going to hit a roadblock.
Yeah. Hmm.
And it doesn't mean that the school or the teacher's not doing their job.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just we found your child's outer limit.
Hmm.
And so that chart that starts to take a dip,
Yeah.
don't panic, right?
Right.
Support your child. Go if you want to meet with the teacher. What could we be doing? What is it? Is there something we can do at home to support you and partner with you?
Yeah.
Because that's really the best parent relationships with the schools,
Yeah.
or the ones where there's a partnership and not this transactional relationship, right?
Yeah.
And I work in private school and we deal with this sometimes, which is there's I'd say there's a stereotype in private school that it's very transactional. I pay
Hmm.
you, you give me
Right.
this, right?
Yeah.
We don't
Hmm.
run it, it's not a retail shop,
Yeah.
right? We're still just
Hmm.
doing school, but you're paying for a very particular type of experience, right?
Yeah.
Could be, do we have less, fewer students? That's one of my big pet peeves, less and
Hmm.
fewer. We have fewer students in the school.
Oh.
Could be religious based, could be whatever, right?
Yeah.
But school is best when the parents and the school are working to transform
Yeah.
the child's experience and
Hmm.
not working as a transaction where I pay you, or I do this, I pay my taxes, and I expect my child to be an honor roll student.
Right.
And
Hmm.
so I'd say those two things stand out to me over the years.
Yeah.
Child development is not linear,
Hmm.
and good partnership really is defined as working together to transform
Yeah.
your child's experience, not as a transaction where you are owed something
Yeah.
just because you showed up.
Right. Yeah. No, and I think, and I'm sure also as you're a parent as well, you've probably noticed with your own kids of just the difference in learning and how they learn between two kids in the same household. And so you
Mm-hmm.
then take that and put them in a school with a bunch of other kids. There's no way everyone's brain is working exactly the same and needing the same thing. So that completely makes sense. But
Right.
it's so easy to get caught up in the standardized tests or the state testing, and oh, where are they? Oh, they're on this level of reading and this level of math. Oh, what does that mean? And what do I do next year? It's so easy to get caught up in all of that and the comparisons of all of it. Um, but
And it's a good lesson from coaching too, because I mean, education isn't a game. There's no I mean, it's not a competition, but in many ways it is a competition,
Mhm.
right? Because ultimately, if your goal for your child and your child's goal is to go to college,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Then if you're going to a competitive school
Mhm.
that has a very low acceptance, I mean, it's hard, right? I get it. I would say I always tell people focus on your process. If the
Mhm.
results aren't what you hope they would be,
Yeah.
what did you do and what are you
Mhm.
going to do differently? How can you adjust how you approached what you did
Mhm.
in a way that you feel is going to improve your outcome goals? So if you don't like, how your child's grades are, for example,
Mhm.
you know, getting mad at your child about making a bad grade doesn't really help.
Mhm.
What helps is getting to a space where your child trusts you
Mhm.
to sit down with them and have the
Yeah.
relationship where you say, okay, let's go over how you prepared for this test.
Yeah.
What could we do differently? What worked? What didn't work? And it's so nuanced, Jen, because you don't know what's going to be on the test. Your child doesn't know what's going to be. I used to tell people this sometimes, like if there's 10 questions on a test or a quiz, let's say for example,
Yeah.
and the content for that test or quiz were these 10 items.
Yeah.
And let's say you knew 8 out of those 10 items really, really, really well,
Yeah.
but 2 of them you just really didn't get.
Mhm.
Then you go to sit down for that test or quiz,
Yeah.
and 6 of those questions were about things you really knew, but 4 of them
Mhm.
were about the 2 things you didn't know.
Yeah.
So you get a 60 on a test where you
Mhm.
really knew 80% of the
Yeah.
material. And the reason you didn't do better on the test is because the questions that were asked, not because you didn't know everything better.
Mhm.
And so again, it's built in. It's the human error. It's the built-in issues with tests, right? And I get it. You have to test. I'm not anti-test,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
whenever you do a test, there's a degree of variance, and
Yeah.
that's why standardized tests are actually in many ways pretty good
Mhm.
because the variance is built in over time to the statistical and the data analysis, right? So you get a range of score, not
Yeah.
just a score, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
But yeah, it's focus on your process, and you should get better outcomes if you improve your process. Yeah, and again, not to go on a tangent, even though I know you appreciate
Uh,
a good tangent.
of course I do. Yeah.
um, years and years and years ago, the concept of a growth mindset came out, right? And I think over time, that theory has been distilled into not quite what it was intended to be. Because what I hear a lot of, especially, and quite frankly, my wife works in community college, right? So she's
Yeah.
teaching college kids. She hears this way more than I do,
Yeah.
and it really worries her where students will say, well, I worked really hard on this assignment.
Yeah.
I don't understand why I got a D. I
Mhm.
really worked hard. And what we have to say is, well, how hard you work doesn't guarantee a good outcome here. But a lot of, over the last couple of decades,
Mhm.
a lot of the messaging around school has been just growth mindset, work hard. If you work hard, you'll do well. Well, no, you
Right.
may work really, really hard and still not do well.
Yeah.
And I think the message should be if you want to do well, it
Mhm.
takes hard work.
Yeah.
And it takes hard work over time to really get to understand and know something better. And
Yeah.
you may not get it right away, but if you stick with it, you
Mhm.
will get better at that thing. But, you know, I, I see that in school, and I know my wife sees it in her job.
Yeah.
It's well, because I worked hard, I should get an
Mhm.
A or a B or a C. I should pass the
Right.
class just because I worked hard.
Yeah.
And again, I think that's just maybe it's because I'm Gen X, but it's just that's not
Yeah.
really how the world works.
Right.
And I think
Yeah.
sometimes we've done students a disservice by, well, he worked really hard, so I'll give him that extra 10
Right.
points and give him that grade. And I mean, no one likes to see kids struggle,
Right. Mhm.
but I think, again, bringing your authentic self into the equation,
Mhm.
realizing as a professional,
Yeah.
You have an ethical obligation
Hmm.
to evaluate learning as a professional
Yeah.
and not as the friend, right? The
Right.
friend will pat you on the back and give you whatever you want.
Sure. Yeah.
But, if you go to the doctor
Yeah.
and you have high blood pressure,
Yeah.
you can be really nice and like your doctor, and he's not going to, or she's not going to say, "Oh, your blood pressure's fine. Don't worry
Right.
about it. I'll take a few points off the blood
Yeah.
pressure. You'll be okay."
I
Well,
know you've
no,
been trying to get that down. No
right,
problem.
right. I know you've been trying, but you're still here, and you
Yeah.
need to keep
Mm.
doing this if you want to
Yes.
improve, right? And so, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. The brain is a muscle. You gotta keep working at that. And something I'm hearing you describe as you're talking is, I know another idea of yours is that learning is a lifestyle, not a product, and that's what you've been talking about so far, of the idea of putting books everywhere in your house and having your kids see you reading as well, or this community between teachers and parents. But can you tell me more about that?
sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So, it kind of gets to what I was saying earlier about when I start to feel unbalanced or uncertain, what are the sort of guidelines that I try to draw upon? I think some of these are these learning lifestyle, pieces. And of course, one of them, like I mentioned, was, reminding yourself of your greater purpose and, trying to set goals and make decisions in life that are aligned with that purpose.
Mhm.
I do think, in addition to improving your process and getting to know people and building relationships,
Mhm.
I think sharing what you know with others
Mhm.
is important. So the concept of knowledge creation
Yeah.
is really important to me. All right. So for
Mhm.
example, if I look at this symbol and I know it's the letter A,
Mhm.
right? That is just sort of factual knowledge, right? And then I take that letter A and I use it to spell a word,
Mhm.
right? And so now I know how to spell. I can apply that. No, I can apply that information and use it. But when I
Yeah.
share with other
Mhm.
people, I've elevated the collective understanding of this concept. And
Mhm.
so I think part of living a sort of a learning lifestyle is when you have an opportunity to share what you
Mhm.
know. And if you think it's going to help somebody else,
Yeah.
by sharing it, you have by default raised the collective wisdom
Yeah.
of the community that you live in, right? That you work in. Feedback is really important. I mean, being able to give useful feedback to people,
Mhm.
not just give them an evaluation of their work, but then say, here are some suggestions on how I would address that. And here's how I can support you. And here are some options for you, right? To,
Yeah.
to, to address these things, right? So, and it could be good feedback. Hey, this is really great. Share with everyone how you did this because I think this is a
Yeah.
good lesson we all should learn. And sometimes we
Mhm.
forget that we hoard what we know because we feel like if I know this and no one else knows it, I have some kind of power over
Yeah.
someone, and that doesn't really help.
Yeah.
um, I think staying active is great for the brain. I mean, you
Yeah.
have to stay active, even if it's just, congratulations on all your walking recently. So getting out and walking and or working out or meditating or whatever it is you're doing to stay active is really important. And if you're going to play, you know, you play hard,
Yeah.
right? If you're
Mhm.
going to play hard, and if you're going to study smart. I know sometimes people say, study hard. Well, what does that
Yeah.
mean, right?
Yeah.
And I have thoughts around that we can share in a little bit, but play hard, study
Mhm.
smart, have a smart approach to your learning,
Yeah.
and just have a variety of interests. Like we said, here I am. I'm PhD in education and working in private school. I
Yeah.
was a baseball coach. I played
Mhm.
football, and I have a Disney podcast with my
Yeah.
daughter, and I have other interests, right?
Yeah.
So I think variety is the spice of life, and so not being so wrapped up in one thing that's part of your identity
Mhm.
is healthy psychologically, right? But
Yeah.
also healthy because it exposes you to other
Mhm.
people from whom you may learn new things, and then the cycle continues, right? I've learned this and now I can bring this into my other communities and I can share these things as it becomes relevant to the conversations we're having. But yeah, I think just in general, those sort of guidelines on living, I think
Yeah.
align really well with being a learner, being a teacher,
Mhm.
but are also, very healthy
Yeah.
for people just have, a fulfilling life. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I like it. I like all of it. So I think something that I mean, obviously, I've seen the change from when I was in school to now when my kids are in school, but especially in a post-pandemic world, is technology in the classrooms. And, I don't see chalkboards, I see smart boards. My kids have Chromebooks from the school, and a lot of their learning is done on some of the apps they have on the Chromebook. But also, I'm seeing even in the last 5 years post-pandemic, the changes where they were very heavy on some Chromebook things, and now they're backing away from that and going back into, spelling or more focus on writing and things like that. What kind of changes have you seen when it comes to technology? How do you incorporate that into teaching?
mm,
There are pros to it, but also plenty of cons to it as well. So, what are your thoughts
right.
about that?
Sure. So, I mean, keeping in mind, I don't think the school I started working at had a website, or I certainly didn't have an email address,
Yeah.
right? When I started teaching,
Mhm.
I would say this, and this has been a consistent opinion of technology that I've had over the years,
Mhm.
regardless of the type of technology that's come out. Technology is a tool.
Yeah.
It is a tool. It is to be used for a purpose other than just the sake of having technology.
Mhm.
Like, I would say, I will never buy a smart board for
Mhm.
our school
Okay.
because I've seen smart boards in schools, and you know
Yeah.
what teachers have generally used smart boards for? As whiteboards.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's just a very expensive whiteboard.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So unless you have a real strategic objective for the
Mhm.
types of technology tools you're bringing into school,
Yeah.
typically, I know a lot of schools, especially friends of mine that work in public school, they get
Mhm.
technology because they had to spend the budget.
Yeah.
And you either spend it or you don't spend it, and you lose it, right? You either use it or lose it, right? But it
Mhm.
didn't benefit to a
Yeah.
large degree the teaching because the technology is not going to replace the relationship. And I
Mhm.
know there's a lot of, every time a new technology tool comes out,
Yeah.
schools panic, or there's always the teachers, we're gonna have a world without teachers soon. It's gonna be like the
Mhm.
Jetsons, if anybody remembers
Yeah.
the Jetsons. And I think at the end of the day, a child who's struggling,
Mhm.
who has a real person sitting next to them,
Yeah.
looking them in the eye, reassuring them that they're making progress,
Mhm.
is you can't replicate that
Yeah.
with an AI tool or an AI agent, right?
Mhm.
It'll tell, and again, you have to be able to read it or hear it and whatever. But
Mhm.
teaching is so much about how a child feels,
Yeah.
and not is the lesson plan scaffolded correctly, because
Right.
you can overcome some deficiencies in your planning if you have a really strong emotional connection with your students. If they believe you and you really believe in them and they trust you, even if you make a mistake, you can admit your mistake and we'll move on, and we'll learn from this experience. And I think you can't replicate that with technology. Certainly, I think webinars for professional development are a huge benefit. Zoom calls, Teams calls, whatever system you use.
Mhm.
I mean, these are important ways for teachers to connect with other teachers, with other experts, get that professional knowledge that would have been hard to get without
Mhm.
technology. But at the end of the day, it's a tool. And with the growing need for, or the growing influence of AI, I think a lot of school leaders they come down on one of two camps, right? They're either anti AI, or kids have to just do this without AI, or whatever. Here's personal opinion.
Mhm.
In the history of humankind,
Yeah.
in the history of humankind,
Mhm.
there has never been a significant advancement in technology
Yeah.
that went away.
Mm-hmm.
It always got incorporated into the fabric of society and it was built upon. So,
Yeah.
my personal opinion, if you're a person working in a school and you are on the anti AI camp,
Yeah.
you were probably back when I started the anti laptop camp, the
Yeah.
anti internet camp, the anti email camp. And guess what? It's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
I know this about human nature. I have a business degree in undergraduate.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember much from my business classes, but I remember this lesson.
Mm-hmm.
In general, human beings are two things: they are lazy and they are greedy. They want to get
Mm-hmm.
as much as they can and do as little work as possible to get those things. And
Mm-hmm.
it's okay to admit that, right?
Yeah.
AI as a tool
Yeah.
is helpful in efficiency and in getting a little bit more done in less time. And but like my wife says, garbage in, garbage out. So how
Yeah.
does AI in school begin to interface? And I would say it's because if you're not teaching students how to use it correctly, and if the
Yeah.
students don't have the underlying skills to
Mm-hmm.
communicate with the AI agent clearly and effectively, they're
Yeah.
not going to get what they really want out of it. If you
Mm-hmm.
can't write a sentence
Yeah.
to have it make sense,
Yeah.
which is a basic English lesson
Yeah.
or language arts lesson, how can you tell the AI
Mm-hmm.
what you want? Even if
Yeah.
you're using voice activated stuff, if you can't
Yeah.
speak
Mm-hmm.
correctly to get what
Yeah.
you want, if you don't know how to ask for what you want or describe what you want, it doesn't matter. The AI is just going to spit out what it
Yeah.
hears.
Mm-hmm.
And so things like language arts teachers,
Mm-hmm.
humanities teachers,
Yeah.
when we talk about AI development, there's a lot of STEM focus, and it's great, right?
Yeah.
But to use AI correctly,
Mm-hmm.
you have to have a strong humanities background. You have to have that sort of foundation
Yeah.
if you want to use it well. And so what's happening in schools are never cutting edge with
Yeah.
technology.
Yeah.
I mean, we're always behind the curve.
Yeah.
So getting teachers or your technology departments opportunities to understand AI, to understand
Mm-hmm.
the basics of it. Like last year during our holiday break, a winter
Mm-hmm.
holiday break, I took 3 Coursera classes on AI from
Yeah.
Google just because I
Mm-hmm.
needed to understand just the basics of this. And then I
Yeah.
went to our tech director and I said, here's the deal. You need to learn this too. And he had already started doing that. And I
Yeah.
said, but as the technology director of our school, with
Yeah.
the tools that are available, either that are free or that
Mm-hmm.
we're already paying for, find me, I don't know, find me $50,000 in savings.
Yeah.
And he was able to do it pretty quickly because it was like, okay, well, I can start using this for this and I can start using this for that.
Yeah.
So, technology in school, listen, it's a tool. I think that running away from it is not really, in my opinion, a, I think it's a losing path.
Yeah.
Secondly, and more importantly, I think students, whatever grade your community feels is appropriate. For me, I would say fourth, fifth grade
Mm-hmm.
time frame. Students should be taking a class on digital citizenship and
Mm-hmm.
how to keep themselves safe. And
Yeah.
that should be taught as a requirement before they get into middle school or as they're getting into middle school,
Mm-hmm.
because there is a real, it's hard. And
Huh?
parents, I mean, God bless them. I'm one
Yeah.
of them. There's
Mm-hmm.
only so much you can do.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
have to give your children skills and lessons on what to look for, how to not be taken advantage of, how to not fall into these traps, and
Mm-hmm.
then how to address it if you feel like technology is getting away from you.
Yeah.
And so like at our school we do a lot of work with like our counseling department, which
Mm-hmm.
is we do a lot of social and emotional work,
Yeah.
but some of it starts to overlap with technology because where does some of these unhealthy relationships stem from?
Yeah.
It was a chat group online on the weekend, or it was a
Mm-hmm.
text or a voicemail that was sent.
Yeah.
And so all of these things there's a Venn diagram where all these things connect. And I think schools do have a responsibility
Mm-hmm.
um, to recognize that these are the lessons our children need to be exposed to, or at least given opportunities to learn from
Hmm.
before life gets too far down the path. And again, parent partnership. Hey,
Yeah.
parents, these are some of the goals we have this year. Here's why we're doing this. Here's what this is going to be. Because especially when it comes to technology, you probably see this when you go to your parent meetings.
Hmm.
There are parents that are all over the map on what they
Oh, yeah.
expect.
Hmm.
So as a
Yeah.
school, you just have to be clear. Here's why we're doing this. This is what we're going to be doing. You can share
Hmm.
the lessons. You invite the parents for a lesson too. Come in and
Right.
hear it for yourself, right?
Hmm.
And but yeah, technology, it just you have to have the right sort of perspective on what it really is. And
Hmm.
then as a school, how does that fit into, like we started the conversation with, how does
Yeah.
this tool fit into this purpose for this community?
Yeah.
And then as the leader of the
Mhm.
school, your job is to make sure that all the people responsible for these things have a strong sense of alignment on what they're there to do and how they're being supported and what the expectation is,
Yeah.
and making sure that that tool doesn't become an impediment to building community
Yeah.
and delivering your promise to the families whose children show up at your school every day.
Yeah. I agree that it can be a great tool and it can be a good support, and just another addition to the big picture. But I am happy to kind of see the schools already like pulling, and I understand in the during the pandemic and a little bit post-pandemic, you were relying on it more because no one knew, are we shutting down again? Are we what's going to happen? And you kind of want the kids to be a little bit more prepared for those things, but it's nice to see them moving away from that a little bit as well and kind of going back to basics, but also it's nice to have as another tool. And I agree, you gotta kind of coexist with it and make it a part of your world and not be afraid of it and not act like, oh, you don't need that because it's only going to continue and get bigger and crazier, I'm sure. Because
And there's students who need these tools.
yes, yes,
I mean, there are students that have learning challenges in which these tools are really vital
yeah,
to them having an even playing field with their peers
hmm,
to be able to learn and engage.
yeah,
And if how schools did school during the pandemic
hmm,
was so much better,
yeah,
they would have continued doing it afterwards,
yeah,
right?
hmm,
Everyone pretty much went back to class. And
yeah,
there's a reason for that
yeah,
because whether people realize it or not, and it could be, I just have to have childcare, right? I got to go to a
yeah,
job, I got to send my kid to
hmm,
school, right?
yeah,
But there's also, I think, a pretty generally well accepted
hmm,
mindset around school, which is you can't replicate being there in person with your
hmm,
peers, with your teachers, seeing them, shaking their hands, playing with them. That can't be replicated through a screen.
hmm,
And there's value in that. There's value in learning how to share the swing. There's value in learning how to get along when you're playing kickball and there's an argument whether you were safe or out.
yeah,
These are the lessons that in person school
yeah,
teaches
hmm,
that with if it was just at home with a screen and a
yeah,
website,
hmm,
you miss out on that. And
yeah,
then what happens as a society? What happens to our community as we describe as a society? Well,
hmm,
we become very siloed and isolated,
yeah,
and there's mental health issues that go along with that. And then
yeah,
there is, you know, one issue
mhm.
after another. You can just go down that path.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I think even since that time, because I know in the early days of the pandemic, teachers were just being praised left and right. And I feel like it's taken a turn in the last couple of years where now they're getting some not so much love, in the social media world or whatever it is. I
Yeah.
think teachers are amazing. I think they're awesome. I think they have to juggle so many things throughout the day, and I wonder as a head of school how you're able to, especially after all these years being in this world, how you're able to keep a positive mindset for your own personal growth, but also to have that trickle down so that your team isn't getting burnt out by everything happening and
Right.
everything being thrown at them.
Well, I think it's finding a healthy balance between recognizing that people are going to have good days and bad days,
Mhm. Yeah.
and on their days that aren't the most productive, are they still living into their purpose? Are they still following sort of this path that you've laid out for them? I think in my job, structuring the support system of the school has been really important. My current role, this is my third year
Hmm.
in this role. You know, in the 3 years that I've been there, we've hired a full-time nurse. We didn't have a nurse when I arrived. And so
Hmm.
now teachers don't have to worry about putting on band-aids and ice packs and taking temperature.
Yeah.
Somebody's taking that burden off of them so they can do
Hmm.
more teaching and less nursing. We
Yeah.
hired a full-time school counselor. So now the teachers don't have to sort of play, WebMD on social and emotional issues, right? So we have a counselor they can collaborate with on if they're seeing something out of the ordinary,
Hmm.
because we have families in crisis,
Yeah.
and sometimes the teacher, even with the best of intention, they're not trained to deal with
Hmm.
those crises, right? We've hired a full time learning support teacher.
Hmm.
So, children that were in our school that we knew had a degree of learning challenge that we were trying to manage in the classroom.
Yeah.
Again, the teachers weren't trained specifically for a lot of those issues, but they were giving them personal attention and small group work and extended
Hmm.
time on their own. But now, with a professional who's trained, we
Hmm.
can do more pull out work, and those kids can work in small groups with that person, and they can, be addressed that way.
Hmm.
So, student wellness as a whole,
Yeah.
we developed this student wellness department. But the truth is, it was also there as a layer of significant support to the staff where they didn't feel the anxiety and the burden of
Yeah.
having to not just prepare their environment for their classroom and their lesson, but now
Hmm.
all these other pieces, right? I think as the school leader, being mindful of the facilities and making sure you're investing in repair and maintenance and having policies and protocols. Again, every little bit to relieve some of the pressure off of staff, teaching staff to focus on teaching as much as possible goes a long way. So, like our teachers aren't buying Kleenex for their classrooms. We
Yeah.
keep a stock of Kleenex. If you need it, you submit a ticket and somebody will show up with Kleenex, right? Or, when we do like special lunches for students one day a week, we'll order extra food so that if a teacher doesn't have time to sit down and eat, they can run by and grab something to eat without it costing them anything. So all of these little pieces, I think, go a long way. But I think
Yeah.
also, and I don't know how many school leaders do this,
Hmm.
having a very clear set of keys to
Hmm.
delivering your school's experience is so
Hmm.
important. And this was a lesson I learned during the pandemic,
Hmm.
because I knew that there would be a variety of opinions on how we were going to do X, Y, and Z. So I
Hmm.
had to find out for my community what mattered most, what were the steps we were going to take to make these decisions, what were the sort of the universal guidelines that I needed to put in place so that every single staff member, to borrow a phrase, was singing from the same hymn book, that
Hmm.
they weren't getting one answer from one class and a different answer from a different
Right.
class. That is the burden of leadership.
Hmm.
And so at the school I'm at now, we have a very clear sense of, you know, in my daily work,
Hmm.
in order, what matters most.
Yeah.
Safety and security is number one. So anytime I'm faced with a situation, is this a safety or security issue?
Hmm.
Because I have to deal with that first.
Yeah.
Second is we have a set of characteristics, of values, right, that guide our interpersonal relationships. At our school, we call it IGROW, right? It
Hmm.
stands for integrity, grace, respect, optimism, and wisdom. So in everything we do with people,
Yeah.
we try to project those qualities with our students, model them for our students, model them with our vendors.
Yeah.
When it extends, I mean, when we hire someone to, repair a door lock,
Yeah.
I'm like, is this guy acting with integrity or is he
Yeah.
not? Right. I'm not hiring somebody who doesn't match our values. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Professionalism is our third sort of step,
Yeah.
and I tell teachers all the time, you are a professional. Be a professional.
Mm-hmm.
Be prepared. Have a plan B. Have a plan C. Respond to people. Give feedback.
Yeah.
This isn't. I mean, teaching in some ways is improv because you don't know what's going to happen every day,
Right.
but
Mm-hmm.
it's sort of planned improv. Like I know what my list of
Guidelines.
responses should be, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then the fourth is because we're a very small school, is being efficient. We don't want to waste people's tuition dollars. And certainly if I was in a public school, I wouldn't want to waste tax dollars any more than I had to spend tax dollars. So, I tell people all the time, like I print on both sides of the page in my
Mm-hmm.
office, right? Because we want to stretch things out as much as possible. So, but we have established these things. So when your question about supporting teachers and them feeling overwhelmed and how do you help them with that?
Mm-hmm.
Just like with kids,
Yeah.
there's security in knowing what the expectations are with explicit clarity and that you demonstrate as the leadership team
Yeah.
that every day that you're following through on your promise to the staff that you're
Mm-hmm.
modeling these same values.
Yep.
What applies to our custodian
Mm-hmm.
applies to me as the head of school. It is
Yeah.
the same set of expectations,
Yeah.
but it's modeling those things, it's reinforcing them, and it's doing. I mean, little symbolic things go a long way. It's a long answer to a short question. One of the most powerful things we've done at our school
Mm-hmm.
to help teachers feel supported
Yeah.
is our mascot is the Bulldogs, right?
Mm-hmm.
2 years ago when I got there, I had our tech guy do some coding on our website, and you can go to our website or at the end our monthly or our weekly newsletter that comes out on Fridays.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a symbol that we've created. It's called the Bulldog compliments, right? And if
Okay.
you've been to Walt Disney World, they have like cast compliments, right?
Uh-huh. Yep.
I wanted him to create a thing where I can click the little symbol for Bulldog compliment,
Mm-hmm.
and then I could pick which staff member I did that I want to compliment, and
Yeah.
then I get a list of compliments that I can pick from.
Mm-hmm.
And every time someone submits one of those,
Yeah.
it comes to me as the head of
Mm-hmm.
school first.
Yeah.
I then forward it to the staff member that is being complimented. And that way, I know that the staff member has done a great thing.
Yeah.
And the staff member knows that I know.
Yeah.
And it's been, I mean, thousands in
Yeah.
the last 2 years. I have received thousands of compliments from
Yeah.
either other staff members or parents or students.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's these little things,
Yeah.
you know, yeah, people want a livable wage. We try to pay as much as we can.
Sure.
We do these little things to help them out. But again, it's to model, our community values, what makes us a great place to work and to go to
Mhm.
school. And at the same time, how do we treat you as a professional,
Yeah.
right? Because sometimes people don't know how to treat teachers. It's kind of like somebody will ask me, like, the Christmas time will come up. Somebody will say, "What do teachers like for Christmas?"
Uh-huh.
And I would say, "Well, what do you like for Christmas?" I mean,
Right.
teachers are people too, right?
They're a person, so
Right, right. Yeah, it's like
yeah.
can I get them a little ornament with an apple on it that says "World's Greatest Teacher"? I said, "You are welcome to do that," but they probably already have 50 of those on their
Exactly.
tree,
Yeah.
right? So, but
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. And I love the bulldog compliments, and that's awesome that you've gotten so many and that everyone is embracing that because that helps that community as well and just um build the confidence that everyone's like, "Oh, okay. I am doing okay here and everything is going well." And I feel like that's a big driver for a school of just knowing that you're doing okay.
well, and it builds a culture of recognition and empathy
Yeah.
and support
Yeah.
as opposed to a transaction. Like
Yeah.
it's easy. Like I pay tuition,
Yeah.
my teacher should be doing X, Y, and Z. And I was like, well, we don't have those conversations,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Because process. When
Yeah.
as a leader of the school, you have a team and you've developed and refined a process that leads
Mhm.
to better outcomes, and then you just repeat that process and you evaluate it and you tweak it based
Mhm.
on the feedback you're getting.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it's going to lead to more and more better outcomes. And I think
Yeah.
schools, they lose sight of that sometimes. They lose sight of, in the effort to improve their test scores.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't blame the school, but
Yeah.
they don't have the time sometimes or the bandwidth or the resources to say, well, let's evaluate our process
Yeah.
and make changes. Or even worse, we know what we have to change in our process,
Yeah.
but the system we're in isn't allowing us to make those changes.
Right.
So I'm being asked to deliver better results
Mm-hmm.
without being able to change how I get those results.
Yeah.
And the answer is, well, your teachers just aren't doing a good enough job.
Right.
And it's like, well,
Mm-hmm.
are they? I mean,
Right.
really? Where's your evidence that the teacher's not doing their
Yeah.
job?
Mm-hmm.
And then that gets into a whole discussion for another episode
Yeah.
around data.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because what does the data say? What do the standardized test scores say
Yeah.
about your child and your child's school? It
Yeah.
says nothing about the teachers. All it says is this is what your child did this day on this test, and this is
Correct.
what your school did this year on this test.
Yeah.
It doesn't say that that teacher, and that teacher did a bad job, but these two teachers did a great job.
Right. And I've already, in terms of having to come back for another episode, I've already decided you're coming back for at least one more, but that's another one, so probably two more. So good to know we're
That
on the same page.
delightful.
Um, okay, one thing I definitely want to, because I want to watch your time. You have been very generous with your time today. I did want to talk about a passion project you had called Thrive-a-Pea, though.
Mm,
And did I say that correctly?
yes.
Okay,
Mm-hmm,
good.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um, so can you tell us more about that? And I also want to know if that podcast will be coming back. Thank you. Go ahead.
That's a great question. So about 13 years ago, I was in this phase of my career where I was blogging every day, and I
Mm-hmm.
had like the Thrive-a-Pea blog, and I made up this word Thrive-a-Pea. I was actually, I don't know, it was like a Sunday morning, and I was drinking coffee, and I was like, it's not therapy. I don't really do therapy. I'm not a therapist,
Yeah.
but I like achieving, Thrive-a-Pea. Okay, that sounds good. So
Yeah.
I used to write this blog all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually self published a bunch of really not well written, quick self published books on Amazon. If
Yeah.
you go on Amazon and you type my name in, you'll find them there. I guess they're 99 cents.
Everyone
Um,
go to Amazon right now and do that.
yeah, I mean, I think I got like 2 cents in royalties over the past 15 years, but I
Yeah.
would say most of what I've written about in those books I've shared in your podcast today. So, so Thrive was sort of this way for me to be reflective in my practice
Mm-hmm.
and write a blog to sort of share my thoughts and where I was going with things.
Yeah.
I was doing a little bit of a podcast on the Thrive podcast for a while. And again, this was a while back.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
2018-ish.
yeah. And so I moved away from that because I changed jobs and we moved to a different city and a different state. And our children got older and my time got, taken up in different ways.
Yeah.
Um, I would say this: if people are interested
Mm-hmm.
in more of my professional musings,
Mm-hmm.
I do have a Substack, and I was writing on it pretty consistently for a while, but I do it periodically now. And I'll usually share that also on LinkedIn whenever
Mm-hmm.
I do something on Substack. Um, I don't know if the Thrive podcast will come back. I think part
Mm-hmm.
of it is, for the life of me, I couldn't remember the login to get into the system to actually do the podcast anymore
Sure.
because I
Mm-hmm.
didn't write any of that down.
Yeah.
Nor do I think I can still figure out the blog. I think the blog is still there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I don't know. I've thought about it. I would say this is where my mind is now. My mind right now is getting my kids through college, doing a good job, being available to kind people like yourself to share whatever wisdom I may have that would be helpful to you. If you have listeners that heard something today that was like, oh, I'd like to talk more to this person about what I'm dealing with at my home with my child. I don't
Mm-hmm.
run a private consulting business.
Yeah.
um, but if people want to reach out to me and have a conversation, I'm happy to listen, right? I'm happy to try to help,
Mm-hmm.
but I will tell you what, I am not. a therapist, right? I'm not a
Mhm.
child psychologist. My PhD was in school leadership.
Mhm.
So I can give perspective based on experience
Yeah.
um, and work in the trenches, but it wouldn't
Mhm.
be clinical advice like a specialist who's a therapist would be able to do.
Yeah.
But you never know. I mean,
Never say
I
never.
guess if the response to this show is so overwhelming that I should revisit, then I'll be happy to revisit. I will say this: I'm a little embarrassed because I would say a couple of years ago, I was contacted by an actual therapist in another state who
Mhm.
wanted to use Thrivapy for
Oh.
their business,
Mhm.
and they reached out to me because I had a Thrivapy Twitter account.
Yeah.
I probably still do. I think I
Yeah.
still do. And they were like, I wanted to know if you could let me use that handle because I want to use it for my business. And I was like, I don't know. I might still use it. And I
Yeah.
didn't. I should have just let them have it, but I didn't.
That
But
means there's still, that means you're going to go back to it. Like you were keeping it, you know, because you might go back to it.
listen, I like helping people. And so if and I like my job, right?
Mhm.
So if anyone's listening that also has an association with the place that I work now, I am not, I want to be clear and explicit.
Yeah.
I am
This is a
not saying
side
that I have
project
any
thing.
plans
Yeah.
of I plan on retiring from this place, right?
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
it's okay.
Yeah.
But um, if people feel I have something of value to offer, I'm happy to engage in a conversation about short term consulting help.
Yeah. I like it. All right, get your letters out there. Find them on social media.
Yeah,
We'll
do
be
that.
putting all the getting all the plugs at the end here and putting them in the show notes. So be sure to reach out. Okay, and another place people can find you, which is how we found each other, is the Disney Assembled podcast, which you have with your daughter. Can you tell us about that and how that got started?
Sure. So the story around Disney Assembled is pretty simple. My daughter, who we call Mimi,
Hmm.
is when we were in the pandemic, she was about to enter high school. I think she was in eighth grade, finishing eighth grade, getting ready to go into ninth grade.
Hmm.
And she had been a soccer player for a long time. And I was never a soccer player, but I was an athlete and a coach. So sort of my bond with her as my daughter, I think it's important for parents to have something special they do with their kids, right? So my thing with Mimi was the soccer.
Hmm.
When Mimi decided that soccer was not part of her future, I was panicked because I didn't want to be the dad of a teenage, soon to be teenage daughter, a teenage
Yeah.
daughter, and a critical point of our life and not have a way to stay connected to her. And so one of the things that she and I always had in common was we both loved Disney, whether it was watching movies or going to the parks or whatever, or talking about going to the parks. So during the pandemic, I said, well, once a week, let's just sit down one day a week and just sit down and talk about a little bit about Disney as a way to
Yeah.
stay connected to each other. So we started doing that. And I just said, hey, I think this is great. Why don't we record our conversation and share it online as a podcast? And maybe there are parents with other children that they're trying to make a
Hmm.
connection with, or they're on their way to work or school and their kids are in the car.
Yeah.
If there's any way that our conversation could bring a little joy or help other parents connect with their kids better, why don't
Hmm.
we share it? So she was fine with that. So we started doing Disney Assembled about 5 years ago.
Hmm.
And so we started that when Mimi was entering high school. She's now a sophomore in college. She just turned 20 years old. We're
Hmm.
still doing the podcast pretty much every week.
Hmm.
We're creeping up on our 300th
Yeah.
episode there. And yeah, so but our purposes remain the same. It's
Yeah.
been to create joy and to help people get through their day. And, I thought, staying connected with a 15-year-old was a challenge, and it was. Um, but
Hmm.
a 20-year-old who doesn't live in your home anymore is an additional challenge. And so the fact that we still have these conversations is important. And I will say this, I've been accused of this by offline, right?
Hmm.
That I'm forcing her to do this as her parent, that in some way I'm influencing her and forcing her
Who
to do
said
this. I want
that?
to be clear.
Who's saying that?
People have said that. People have said that.
Mm.
Once in a while, a troll will come in and say, "Rah, rah, rah." So
Oh.
I'll say this. I have offered Mimi to stop Disney Assembled
Yeah.
whenever she feels that it's no longer something she wants to do and that I'm not going to be offended by it. I'm not going to take it personally. And I understand that someday she's going to have a family and a spouse and children, maybe, and she's not going to want to do this anymore because she's going to have her own life to live. I
Yeah.
get it.
Mhm.
I promise everyone who's listening, the last thing she wants to do is stop doing this. She
Mhm.
loves it. She does it willingly. And so I want to put that out there for the world to hear
Yeah.
that there is no, I'm not withholding affection or college tuition for her to continue to do
God.
this, right?
Mhm.
She is a willing participant
Yeah.
in these weekly conversations. So, but yeah, we love doing it. And probably other than watching her grow up
Yeah.
and being made to engage with older people in our conversation,
Yeah.
because sometimes we'll have guests on our show and
Yeah.
she's handled herself really well.
Yeah. Mhm.
Um, Being able to meet people like yourself,
Mhm.
Frank, your brother, all the
Yeah.
people in the community you've built and other people that we've built in
Yeah.
our podcast community has been absolutely fantastic. So,
Yeah.
again, part of the learning lifestyle, right?
Mhm.
Share what you know, share what you love with other people,
Yeah.
and you never know. People will find you and they'll feel that connection, and
Yeah.
the world's a better place for it.
100%. And I love that you built it off just still wanting that connection and that bond and keeping that going with her. You didn't, especially during those years when it gets a little tougher. So that's very awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you do have to come back and we have to make some connections between Disney and leadership and the school and all that. I was going to go down that path. I'm like, that's a whole other podcast. So that's another episode, I think.
Well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll throw this offer out to you. I'm actually scheduled to go back to the Disney Institute for another course
Yeah.
in early December. Actually, I'll be there on my birthday this
Okay.
year. So I'm expecting Disney. I'm expecting a birthday button when I arrive. But I would be happy to come on
Yeah.
and if you think it's a good conversation, share a conversation around what I've learned through the Disney Institute that has impacted my work as an educator, but also how I see my role as a parent.
Yeah, no, definitely. And yeah, I start as we're talking, I'm like, I can't go down that rabbit hole right now. This will be in a few more hours. Um, Thank you so much for doing this. This was awesome. And I love hearing all your insights and everything that you've learned. And I appreciate you sharing it. So if people want to find you so that they let you know that Thrive Up should come back and just to talk in general or to follow or engage, where can they find you?
Absolutely. So if you want to connect with me professionally, or you just say, hey, that guy sounded pretty cool, I'd like to be his friend. Um, Pretty much my handle on LinkedIn. I don't do much on X. I kind of
Hmm.
abandoned X, but it's still there. Instagram,
Hmm.
once in a while I'll throw a TikTok out there personally, but it's pretty much all Dr. Troy Roddy, Dr. Troy Roddy, TROYRODDY. You can find me there. Substack as well. So if you are a Substack follower, you can find me there. Um, the other place is really where I'm more active on social media is through Disney Assembled,
Hmm.
and we're on all of the socials and YouTube and everything at Disney Assembled, just like it sounds.
Yeah.
But mostly TikTok, Instagram, and I guess if you're on Instagram, you're on Threads, and I guess by default Facebook. So we're there
Right.
too.
Yeah. Hmm.
But yeah, if you are interested in the conversations I have with my daughter about Disney, you can
Yeah.
find us there. If you're interested in reaching out to me uh, in other ways,
Yeah.
Dr. Troy Roddy.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Troy. And good to know that you'll be back and we'll talk next time.
Can't wait. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Just My Mom Sense podcast. You can follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Just My Mom Sense and visit justmymomsense.com for past vlogs and a few of my favorite things. Music for this podcast was produced by Matt Harvey.